Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank you for your engagement as we worked to find a resolve, not necessarily with Sally Jewell, but really trying to ensure that within the Department of Interior, as decisions are made that impact our public lands, our refuges, that there is equal and due consideration for the human beings who live in these regions. Americans who are seeking a level of public safety and an assurance that their voices will be heard through a process. As my colleagues know, I have been fighting aggressively to get the Department of Interior to recognize that a 10-mile, one-lane gravel road to be used for non-commercial uses so that the people of King Cove, the Aleut community of 700 and some odd people, can access our state's second longest runway to get out of town when an emergency or a crisis approaches. And Fish and Wildlife Service came back and said, no action alternative is the way that we're going, no road is needed. But in the 2009 law that we passed through this committee, it recognized that there needed to be a public interest determination as to that road. Well, when we're talking about public interest, it's not just the public interest of the land, it's not just the public interest of the waterfowl or the animals that may be in the area, it is the public interest of the people. And through many conversations now with Secretary Salazar, and through a very important meeting that was held here in Washington, D.C., where residents of King Cove were able to meet with the Secretary for the first time to outline their case as to why they should be heard, why their public interest needs to be accommodated in these decisions. The Secretary has agreed to take a second look, to revisit, if you will, the EIS that was conducted by Fish and Wildlife Service. He has directed that the Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs go out to King Cove and meet with the people and put in place a process for better understanding as to what the public safety needs of the residents of King Cove are. He's further directed that the Secretary of Interior, whether it be Ken Salazar or whether it be Sally Jewell, go to King Cove to visit with the people to allow for a process for further information, a public process that will consist of testimony, of input, of really attempting to hear the public side. These are important for that process, and they will be factored into a final determination. But at this point in time, no record of decision will be issued until a public process is completed. I appreciate the Secretary's willingness to work with me on this. But again, as I mentioned in my opening comments when Sally Jewell came before this committee, we all have our King Coves. We all have a situation when we're working with or sometimes against our federal agencies and we don't feel like we're being heard. And sometimes the conversations need to go a little bit deeper. Sometimes we need to press a little bit harder to ensure that the interests of our constituents are addressed, whether it's the Aleut people of King Cove, whether it's the people who are out in the West who are worried about an interpretation of the protections for a sage grouse, whether it is my colleague from West Virginia who is worried about the interpretation of what a stream is. These are significant for each of us. I have taken a position typically when president's nominees come before us. I believe that our constitutional responsibility for advice and consent should begin with very thoughtful questions on our part, and ordinarily it should conclude with the president being able to have his nominees confirmed. Our obligation to get our answers to our questions is always a very serious one. And I think the duty weighs most heavily on us when the interests of our constituents are directly at stake. I will tell you, Mr. Chairman, I have been a little bit disappointed with some of the responses that I have received from the nominee. I'm going to press further with her for additional clarification, and we'll be having many conversations with her, I think, as we move forward. I think it's clear from my comments and from all that I've been engaged in this past week, my decision today as it relates to moving Ms. Jewell's name through the committee is not a decision that I take lightly. In her answers to her questions at the hearing and in her written submissions, she's asserted that her experience and her skill at bringing diverse people together to solve difficult problems on which they have been divided. I pay attention to that. She says specifically that she is a convener. I need her to be a convener. We need her to be a convener. And after evaluating her testimony, meeting with her personally, and then, again, all that we have been engaged with in discussions this week, I will take her at her word as being one who will attempt to use her skills to bring diverse interests and diverse people together, and I will vote to report her nomination today. I do look forward to discussing many of these issues with her further as to how she can bring her skills together to benefit the best interests of all Americans. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity for a little more time than I would usually take.
Thank you.